Hello and welcome to the Warframe tier list. Today we will be going over Gyre. So I have three builds for Gyre. The first one that I opted for is Pillage instead of her one. Pillage is good because it will help you armor strip enemies for the highest kills per minute, and it will also double shield gate. Whenever you press Pillage, you will get a shield gate, and then whenever it retracts, either when the duration ends or when you press it again, it will shield gate you again. And then since it's just an AoE armor drain and you're using electricity as your main source of damage, it is massive for your kills and your survivability. The second build that you can opt for is the better build for survivability. It is by far the best build for her survivability, but also by far the worst build for her kills per minute. This is opting for Muzzle Flash for some extra CC. The problem with this is you'll just be stunning enemies and they'll be behind walls and stuff and you won't be killing them. The third build is Pool instead of her 2. The reason why you might want to consider running Pool instead of her 2 is because her 2 is very, very bad. It is the second worst suck ability in the entire game because you don't have control over where it goes. It will always have randomness to it, and you have to double tap it, which is just not good. The damage from her 2 is good, but it is just extremely clunky. And you also get her 1 back, which is actually overlooked a lot. It is really good for CC and damage, and for stacking her passive to increase her 4 damage. So this is a build that you can try. I personally prefer the Pillage build the most because it is a great mix of survivability and damage. As for the rest of the loadout, any AoE or shock weapon works extremely well here, so you either want an AoE weapon with crit or you want a shock weapon. Amprex, Archoplasmor, Tetra, Envoy, etc., etc. Phantasma works even though it doesn't have crit. I prefer using the Amprex just because you don't really get to use the Amprex these days. So this was the Amprex build I was using, just a standard Amprex build with a Riven. If you don't have a Riven, which I would highly suggest since it is a 2 dispo weapon and not a 1, would just be a Fire Rate Riven, bladed rounds for more crit damage, or I don't know, Hammer Shot. So so Fire Rate, Hammer Shot, bladed rounds, all of those will work in this place. As for your secondary, standard Epitaph build, but opting for Jolt instead of Scorch to help spread her passive more. And for your melee weapon, you really, really want the Glaive as Gyre. The reason you want the Glaive as Gyre is because enemies with Overguard hard counter Gyre. Like, she cannot do anything to fight against them and they will just kill her. So you need a strong weapon that will just kill all of the Eximus for you. That is the Glaive. As for your focus school, you can either opt for Madurai, which she really wants for the cast speed, because her abilities take 2.5 years to cast, or you want Zeneric for the energy sustain, because Gyre's energy economy is terrible despite her 3 giving her energy. As for your cat, you want to use the Panzer with the standard Panzer loadout to help you stay alive, and also to spread viral. And if you're still finding yourself having struggles with energy sustain, you can also opt for Emergence Dissipate. It's kind of awkward to use, it's definitely not reliable, but if you're in a pinch, it can help. This is just a pre-warning that at some points I do get a little ranty, and it may come off as me being overly mean to Gyre, but I just really like her, and it sucks that she's in the position that she's in. Alright, now moving on to the ranking portion of the video, today we will be discussing 4 different topics relating to Gyre. Her kills per minute, her survivability, her overall versatility in the different game modes, and finally, how fun she is to play. All of these tests were done in a Steel Path solo mot run with no specters and no on-call. Alright, so the first topic is her kills per minute. So, Gyre, since there's different builds, her kills per minute greatly varies depending on which build you ran and also what room you're in. Gyre wants to be in a wide open room because that's how you make use of the shock procs and her sucking. You want to suck all the enemies together and then kill them with shock procs and just the raw damage over 4, and also armor strip them with pillage. With pillage and an ideal room, her kills per minute is very high. It is slightly higher than Mirage's even, which is already very high. So if you base it off of that, her kills per minute would be a solid S minus, no questions asked. However, you don't always have the optimal room, and you don't always have the pillage build. If you're opting for more survivability, you're going to be doing less damage because you won't have pillage, you'll be using muzzle flash, it'll be harder for you to kill the super tanky enemies, and you also will be spending more time pressing abilities just to shield gate because pillage double shield gate you, and you'll be CCing enemies so far away with muzzle flash that they're not actually getting sucked in, and they'll be CC'd behind walls. So if you go with the muzzle flash build for more survivability, she only gets about 85 to 90 kills per minute, even in an ideal room. So that is worthy of an A minus. So I will have to go in the middle here just because there's so much variability. So on the high end, she gets an S minus, and on the low end, she gets an A minus. So I will have to give her an A plus for her kills per minute. Now moving on to the second topic, which is her survivability, and boy oh boy, this is where Gyre really struggles. Gyre is very difficult to stay alive in when you're playing solo without specters and no on-call to help you when acolytes spawn. So acolytes just completely game end Gyre. Especially, you do not know fear until you're 40 plus minutes into a mot run and you see Misery spawn. Because Misery will spawn and then he'll summon 2 shades of violence and you'll just get permanently silenced and you cannot play the game, you can't kill them. It's rough. So with just the standard pillage build, her survivability is pretty low. At best, the best I can give it is a C. The reason is she just doesn't have much CC in her kit, and shield gating with her is awkward because with pillage and her 2 being your shield gate abilities, they both are double cast abilities, so it can be very awkward, and sometimes you'll just get caught off guard and then press it and it won't give you your shield back, and then you'll just die. Also, her super long cast time on her 4 will also get you killed, similar to Mirage, so that doesn't help her case, because that is one of the factors of why Mirage got an a B plus instead of an A minus. But on top of all of her other problems, that's why it has to be a C if you're running the pillage build. She's just super awkward, long cast times, no reliable CC in her kit, and you also want to use her in a wide open room to make use of the rest of her kit, so that also doesn't help her survivability. If you go with the muzzle flash build, however, she now has a form of CC in her kit, and that's honestly all she really needs. Her survivability still isn't great, and that's mostly because her energy sustain is also really bad, which lowers her survivability because you'll just run out of energy, or you'll be sitting there at low energy and then you'll be making a bunch of mistakes, or you have to like do a bunch of greedy things to try to get your energy back. But so even with muzzle flash, it's not that great. It's at best a B, maybe a B plus. So again, since there's so much variability in the different builds and how you're playing her, at best, in between, I have to give her a C plus for survivability. Moving on to the third topic, Gyre's overall versatility, and again, she struggles here a lot. So, in base star chart, she's completely fine, but that's really nothing special. Every Warframe is completely fine in the base star chart. And relics in particular, she can be very good in because her 4 will just kill everything in one hit. It's nothing special, but it's also not bad. It's definitely well above average. I thought she would be good for doing sisters, but I found that there just wasn't high enough mob density to make use of the electricity procs, and I also found myself wanting more range, and you can't have more damage and more range, it's not possible, so it was very mediocre. Also, the weapons that you use with Gyre aren't that good at killing the sisters or the hound, and sure, you can make the argument that you can switch to a weapon that is, but then what's the point of playing Gyre if you're not going to use weapons that synergize with her kit? And then you can take her to the steel path, and then all of these problems just get 10 times worse. She doesn't really have the damage to kill the enemies without stacking a lot of enemies together, priming them and then killing them with mass electricity procs. But in most mission types, that just isn't practical. You're not going to be really doing that in an exterminate. You're not going to round up 30 enemies in an exterminate, clump them all together with your 2, and then kill them with electricity procs. What realistically is going to happen is you're just going to run through and kill them with your guns. And then your 4 is just going to be a nuisance because it's going to CC and stun enemies around corners and walls. So, again, it's not that great. And endless missions, it can be okay. And disruption, she definitely does not have the survivability to be viable there at all. Because the second that she stops killing all the enemies and tries to kill a disruption target, she's just going to die. There's also just not that high mob density in disruption. In interception, I guess she would be fine. Defense, she could be okay because she would be CCing stuff with the electricity procs. And then in survival, it's super tile set dependent because, again, like I mentioned earlier, in super cramped corridors, you'll just be CCing enemies through walls, through ceilings, through floors, and that will just lower your kills per minute, leading you to have to pick up a bunch of life support modules. It's a toying cost even in survival if her kit works well. And then the problem's amplified if you're in a group, because if you're in a group, then your allies are going to be running around killing enemies, and if they're killing enemies, then that means that there's not going to be enough enemies for you to suck up with her 2 and then kill them with electricity procs. There's just not going to be enough enemies to generate enough electricity procs to actually kill the stuff. On top of that, your group's going to be annoyed at you because you're just CCing the map and just unlocking the enemies through walls and doors and just lowering the overall kills per minute, depending on the tile set. So even there, even in her best case scenario of a survival, she's just okay. And everywhere else, she's either bad or, again, just okay. And so for these reasons, I have to give her overall versatility a C plus at best, but I'm going to give her a C. Alright, moving on to the final topic, is Gyre fun? In short, I'm going to go on a rant here, so I'm just going to say the ranking right off rip. I'm going to give it a flat B. And I have 27,000 different reasons for it. So I enjoy Gyre thematically. I like how she looks. I like electric-based caster / nuke frames. I think I just like it. But there's just so many problems with her that it just ruins the fun for the most part. If her numbers were just higher and her 2 wasn't so clunky, I would rank her S. But unfortunately, there's just so many bad things about her that just can't be overlooked. And I'll go through them now. Her 1, in my opinion, is one of the coolest and most fun abilities in the game. But unfortunately, you have to get rid of it in most of your builds. Why? Because she can't survive. So you need to place an ability there that helps you survive. Either Pillage for double shield gating plus armor stripping to help you kill the enemies quicker, because the less enemies, the less bullets that you're taking, the easier it is to survive. Or something like Muzzle Flash in the augment to just more CC. So you have to get rid of her 1 in most builds, which that is already an L. Her 2 is so incredibly clunky. It is not consistent in the slightest. Even if you spam double tap, it will suck enemies at random places. And then it's just bad. DE keeps making suck skills for the different Warframes, but they don't want all the suck skills to be the same, so they just keep slightly changing them. And now they've run out of ideas for suck skills without completely making them terrible. We've seen it twice in a row now. Styanax's suck skill is absolutely horrendous. It is by far the worst one in the game. And then there's Gyre's, which was the one previous to Styanax, and that one is the second worst one in the game. It is so clunky, it's not consistent, it's bad. Her 3 just needs damage tweaks. Number tweaks. She does not have enough sustain from her 3. And I've never seen a Warframe that has energy sustain built into their kit have so many energy problems. And I'll just leave her 3 at that. Her 4 is also really cool, but then there's problems with it. On release, her 4 was applying too many shock procs, and it was crashing people's clients. So what did they do? They limited the amount of shock procs it could produce per second. Okay, surely, since they gutted its shock procs, surely they'll increase the base damage of it. And they just didn't. They literally just didn't. So they halved her damage, if not more than halved her damage, and then just left her alone because of a bug crashing people's clients. Why? If her 4 just had higher numbers, it would be so good even now, even with the limited shock procs. But that's not the case, so it's just a mediocre nuke ability that can kill level 50 trash. Oh, crazy. Or it can kill high levels whenever you armor strip them. You know what else can kill high levels when you armor strip them? A Mark 1 Bratton. It's not impressive. It's just so unbelievably disappointing that Gyre could be so much better and could be so much fun, but she just isn't. And for those reasons, even though I like her, I have to give it a B, and honestly, it's lucky I'm not giving it less. It is so frustrating playing her with how clunky she is, and just knowing that she could be so much better. And I'll leave that topic at that. In conclusion, Gyre is a B- tier Warframe who could be made significantly better if she just got some slight number tweaks, particularly for her 4 and her 3. She also might get fixed whenever they eventually release augments for her abilities, but those are always just band-aids and they never feel good. And then there's also Archon Shards. You could also fix a lot of her problems with Archon Shards, such as slotting 1 natural talent shard or 1 or 2 energy sustain shards like the mini energizes, and then extra ability strength for damage. But again, Archon Shards are a cursed way to say that a Warframe could be good, and saying future augments might fix her is at best just wishful thinking.